Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're taking a trip back in time over 2,000 years ago to explore the world of ancient Greece and the art of persuasion.
Specifically, we'll be looking at Aristotle.
Yes, Aristotle and his incredible insights into rhetoric. Ever wonder why some people are just so darn good at getting their point across? Well, Aristotle figured that out way back when, and it's still relevant today.
Absolutely. His work on rhetoric, especially his treatise, well, it's basically the foundation of persuasive communication.
Right. It's like he wrote the playbook on how to win an argument, influence people, and get your ideas heard.
Hmm.
And the crazy thing is, his ideas are just as powerful today as they were back then.
You know, what's really fascinating to me is how he breaks down this whole concept of persuasion into these three key elements, these three appeals that he called ethos, pathos, and logos.
Ethos, pathos, logos.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like a Greek salad, right?
Well, it might sound a bit fancy, but trust me, they're not that complicated.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Imagine you're listening to someone making a point.
Okay, got someone in mind.
Now, ethos is all about the speaker themselves, their credibility, their trustworthiness. It's about answering the question, why should you believe what this person is saying?
So it's like their persuasion resume, right? What makes them qualified to convince us?
Exactly. Maybe they're an expert in their field, maybe they have firsthand experience, or maybe they just have a reputation for being honest and reliable.
Okay, I'm starting to see how ethos works. What about pathos? Is that another Greek word I need to learn?
It is, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Pathos is all about connecting with the audience on an emotional level. Think about those ads that make you laugh or cry, or those speeches that stir up feelings of patriotism or hope or even fear.
Oh, yeah. Like those ASPCA commercials with the sad puppies, they get me every time.
Exactly. Pathos is about tapping into those emotions, those gut feelings, to make an argument more compelling and memorable.
So ethos is the credibility of the speaker, pathos is the emotional appeal, and logos, that must be the brainy one.
You got it. Logos is all about using logic and reason to build a solid argument. This is where you bring in facts, statistics, evidence to support your claims. It's about appealing to the audience's sense of reason.
So ethos is about the who, pathos is about the feel, logos is about the proof. Aristotle is a pretty sharp guy to figure all this out way back then. But you mentioned something about the audience being super important to him. What was his deal with that?
Aristotle was convinced that understanding your audience is absolutely key to persuasion. He said it's not enough to just have a good argument. You have to know who you're talking to, what they care about, what motivates them. It's like tailoring a suit.
A suit. What do you mean?
You wouldn't make a suit without knowing the person's measurements. Right.
Yeah.
Well, the same goes for communication. You need to make sure your message fits the person you're trying to reach.
Okay, I get it. It's about knowing your audience like a tailor knows their client. You have to understand what they need and how to make the message fit them perfectly.
Exactly. And that's what makes Aristotle's work so timeless. Even though he was writing for a very different audience, his insights into persuasion are still so incredibly relevant today. You know, we were just talking about how crucial it is to tailor your message to your audience. Well, Aristotle actually went a step further. He spent a lot of time breaking down audiences into different types and figuring out how a speaker should adjust their approach for each one.
Wait, so like he created ancient Greek personality types? Like, are we going to talk about phlegmatic and choleric temperaments?
Not exactly. He didn't have fancy personality tests or algorithms, but his observations were amazingly insightful. For instance, he noticed that younger audiences are often more easily swayed by appeals to passion and excitement. But an older, more experienced audience might be a bit more skeptical. They might be looking for wisdom and credibility.
That makes sense. A 20-year-old might be ready to jump on the latest trend, but someone with more life experience is probably going to need more convincing. They'll want some proof that it's reliable and worth their time.
Exactly. Aristotle also understood that the situation plays a huge role in how you approach your audience. Think about it. If you're a speaker addressing a group of politicians, you're probably trying to persuade them to take action, to vote a certain way, or to pass a new law.
So in that case, you'd want to emphasize the practical consequences of their decisions, right? Like lay out the potential benefits or drawbacks of their choices using hard logic and evidence.
Precisely. You'd really lean on logos there. But now imagine you're giving a speech at a friend's wedding. Your goal is completely different. You're not trying to win a debate or get them to vote for something. You're trying to celebrate their love story and make everyone feel the joy of the occasion.
Yeah, it'd be pretty awkward to start citing statistics about marriage success rates in the middle of a wedding toast.
Right. You'd want to use pathos there. Storytelling, humor, heartwarming anecdotes. It's all about creating an emotional connection.
This is really making me realize that communication goes so much deeper than just the words themselves. It's about reading the room, understanding the context, and choosing the right approach for the situation. Aristotle was onto something.
He really was. And he even suggested that a speaker might intentionally present themselves as either similar to or different from their audience to achieve a specific effect.
Oh, interesting. So, like finding common ground to build trust or highlighting your unique expertise to stand out. Can you give an example?
Absolutely. Imagine a politician speaking to a group of working class people. They might share stories about their own humble beginnings or talk about the struggles of everyday folks to create a sense of shared experience and build rapport.
They're like, hey, I'm one of you. I get it.
Right. But if that same politician were talking to a room full of wealthy donors, they might emphasize their business acumen and their track record of success in order to appeal to that audience's values and priorities.
So it's not just about demographics. It's about understanding your audience's mindset, what they value, what they aspire to. That's fascinating.
It is. And here's something even more interesting. Understanding your audience isn't just about meeting their expectations. It's also about challenging them, about pushing them to see things in a new light.
So you're not just pandering to what they already believe. You're trying to expand their horizons and maybe even inspire them to change their minds.
Precisely. A skilled communicator can use rhetoric to persuade their audience, yes. But they can also use it to educate, to broaden perspectives, and even to inspire action.
Okay, so let's put this into practice. Let's say I'm giving a presentation at work and my audience is totally skeptical of my ideas. How can I use Aristotle's insights to win them over?
First, you need to understand their skepticism. Why are they hesitant? What are their concerns? What kind of evidence would they find convincing? Once you understand their perspective, you can tailor your message to address those points head on.
So instead of just steamrolling ahead with my own agenda, I need to take a step back, try to see things from their point of view.
Exactly. It's about meeting them where they are. And this is where ethos can be really powerful. If you can demonstrate your credibility and show that you've genuinely considered their concerns, you're much more likely to earn their trust and eventually their support.
You know, this is reminding me of something we talked about earlier, Aristotle's idea that rhetoric isn't just a tool for persuading others, but also for analyzing how others try to persuade us. It's like having a shield against manipulation.
I like that, a shield. And it's so important. You need to be able to identify the techniques being used on you so you don't fall prey to misleading arguments.
Right. We need to be critical thinkers, not just passively expecting what we hear. It's about understanding the game, recognizing the techniques, and then making informed decisions for ourselves.
And that's where understanding pathos can be particularly helpful. When we're aware of how emotional appeals are being used, we can step back and evaluate those appeals objectively. We can ask ourselves, is this genuine emotion? Or is someone trying to manipulate me?
Oh, man. I can think of so many times I've fallen for that. Like those commercials that make you feel like you absolutely need that new gadget or that fancy car in order to be happy. I'm totally seeing the pathos at work now. It's sneaky, but effective.
It definitely can be. And that's precisely why Aristotle believed that understanding rhetoric was so vital for citizens in a democracy. When we can recognize and analyze persuasive techniques, we become less likely to be misled by fancy talk or swayed by propaganda.
So it's not just about winning arguments. It's about being an informed and engaged citizen, equipped to make sound judgments.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something Aristotle called the different types of speeches. He identified three main categories: deliberative, epideictic, and forensic.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break those down for us. What are deliberative, epideictic, and forensic speeches?
Well, deliberative speeches are all about persuading an audience to take action, like we discussed earlier with the politician example. They're common in politics, business, really any situation where decisions need to be made and support needs to be rallied.
Got it. So, like a town hall meeting where everyone's debating a new development project, that's a deliberative speech in action.
Perfect example. Now, epideictic speeches are different. They're more ceremonial. They focus on praising or blaming something or someone. Think of a eulogy or a wedding toast.
Ah, so it's about expressing values, celebrating achievements, maybe even offering criticism.
Exactly. It's about reinforcing shared beliefs or condemning actions that go against those beliefs. And lastly, we have forensic speeches. These are used in legal settings to argue for or against someone's guilt or innocence.
So like the classic courtroom drama where lawyers are battling it out, using every rhetorical trick in the book to sway the jury.
You got it. They rely heavily on evidence and logic, but also on emotional appeals to connect with the jury on a human level.
Wow, so we've gone from those basic appeals to understanding our audience, and now we've got these different types of speeches. It's like Aristotle created a whole framework for communication.
He did. It's remarkable how comprehensive his work is. And you know what? It gets even more fascinating when we delve into his specific tips for building those bulletproof arguments. He had some pretty insightful things to say about the power of storytelling, the different types of evidence you can use, and even how to anticipate your opponent's counterarguments.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. We've got ethos, pathos, logos, and we know how crucial it is to size up our audience. But let's get down to brass tacks. How do we actually build those rock-solid arguments? Aristotle must have had some tips, right?
Oh, he did. He wasn't afraid to get specific. Evidence was a big deal for him. He even broke it down into different types, like witness testimonies, contracts, even
Even what?
well, unfortunately, torture. It was, sadly, an accepted practice back then. Not exactly something we'd advocate for today, of course.
Yeah, I think we can safely leave that one in the past. But the core idea about using evidence is spot on. It doesn't matter if you're writing a report or just trying to convince your friend to try that new Thai place. You got to back up your claims.
Exactly. And Aristotle was smart enough to realize not all evidence is created equal. The most convincing stuff often comes as a surprise or from a source everyone respects. Think about it. If you're in court and suddenly, bam, a surprise witness shows up, changes the whole game.
Totally. Or even just in everyday life, right? If you're trying to convince someone about something and you drop a fact from a source they really admire, that can be pretty persuasive.
It's like an automatic credibility boost. Aristotle also stressed anticipating your opponent's arguments. He believed a truly persuasive argument doesn't just present its own case, it actively dismantles the opposition.
Okay, so it's like a mental chess match.
Mm.
You're not just thinking about your moves, you're trying to predict their every counter move.
Exactly. You got to be a few steps ahead, and this is where logos really shines.
Yeah.
You need that logical firepower to break down those opposing claims, find the weak spots, show why your position is the stronger one.
Like a verbal ninja, deflecting those arguments, and then, boom, a knockout punch of logic.
Now, here's something you might not expect. Aristotle was a big fan of storytelling. He saw it as this powerful way to connect with an audience emotionally, to make those abstract ideas more concrete and relatable.
Wait, really? Storytelling? I usually think of that as being separate from logic and reason.
Right, it seems counterintuitive. But Aristotle saw them as intertwined. He believed a well-told story could make a logical argument way more memorable, give it more impact. Think about how often we use anecdotes or personal experiences to make our point.
Yeah, all the time. Actually, advertising does that constantly. Brands love telling stories about their products to try and make you connect with them emotionally.
Exactly. And good teachers do it too. A good story can make even the most complex topic more engaging, easier to grasp.
So it all circles back to what we've been saying. Rhetoric isn't just for speeches or debates, it's woven into pretty much every aspect of communication.
It really is. Whether you're writing an email, chatting with a friend, even posting on social media, we're all using rhetorical techniques, even if we don't realize it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Aristotle and his rhetoric, I think the big takeaway is that understanding these principles can make us better communicators, more persuasive, more effective at getting our ideas across.
Absolutely. And not just more persuasive, but also more critical thinkers. We can analyze the messages coming at us, make more informed decisions, and avoid being manipulated.
So, dear listener, as you go about your day, keep an ear out for those persuasive messages. They're everywhere. Analyze them. Think about who's speaking, what they want, how they're using evidence and emotion to try and sway you.
And don't be afraid to put these principles into practice yourself. Craft compelling arguments, tell your story, connect with your audience authentically.
That's a wrap on our exploration of rhetoric. But the conversation doesn't end here. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your examples of killer persuasive arguments or maybe some epic rhetorical fails you've witnessed. Join the conversation on our social media. Until next time, happy persuading.